So here's the question. What's better, to flip a house for $5,000 or to use creative financing and make over $200,000? Here's what we're going to dig in today. For those of you who are brand new, I want to welcome you to Noteschool TV. My name is Brian Lauchner. I'm on the teaching team here at Noteschool. And I want to just first say, if today is something that you get a chuckle out of, or you learn something, or this is valuable content to you, make sure you are liking this video. We would love for you to subscribe to this channel. And if you want to participate in these live shows, or you want to comment on these videos, make sure you're pressing the notification bell to actually alert you when we go live, so that you can always jump on the stream and pop in your questions. Today, we're going to be digging into some really great content that I think is going to be kind of mind-opening. And for those of you who are kind of like, I am still unsure even what a note is, or what Noteschool is, or what this stuff is you're talking about. And if you're wanting to learn a little bit more about what Noteschool does, you can go to noteschool.com/TV, and it'll tell you a little bit more about kind of what we do, what we teach, and how you can learn even more. And so today we have an incredible case study with a student who's going to kind of walk us through a really unique story that I think you could probably relate to, especially if you're talking to sellers. If you're talking to sellers right now, this is going to sound kind of familiar, and this might be an opportunity that you might say, wait a minute, I've walked away from a deal just like that. And so we've got some awesome guests with us, but I also have the power team, as I call them. I've got Eddie Speed and Joe Varnadore here, who are going to jump on, and we're going to dig into some of this stuff so that we can get straight to the meat of it. How are you guys doing?
We are awesome. How are you?
We are ready for Thanksgiving, Brian.
Man, that's
what I said. I wore my Thanksgiving shirt today, kind of my fall shirt. I'm in the spirit, and I'm excited for it.
Yeah.
Martha must have picked that out for him.
Well,
Brian.
Martha picks out a lot for me. Yeah, for sure.
Martha being Mrs. Speed.
Yeah.
So Eddie, tell us a little bit about, you're gonna kind of tell us about the creative financing element and kind of what's so special about what we're talking about today.
This story that we're going to have today is a weekly story. It's a daily story with us. Yeah. And that is the guy that we have on is, now last week we had Seth, and he's a ninja, right? He buys hundreds of houses a year. Yeah. And Jay this week, he's not that big of an operator. Now he's a ninja operator. He just doesn't try to go do ninja volume. But he's a smart guy, very seasoned real estate investor. And I remember very well the first time he came to a class. Yep. And he says, I'm doing this really well, but I feel like I'm leaving a lot of money on the table. And I'm not sure which times I am leaving money on the table and which times I'm not. And I think this was a great example of a deal that he sort of positioned it and said, you guys give me some light here of how we could do this. And it's a great story. Good guy. And, I always want Noteschool to be an impact for its students. And I believe that Noteschool has been an impact for Jay.
I love that.
Yes, he has. Absolutely.
Well, I think it's something that a lot of us can resonate with. I mean, it reminds me of in 2016 when I first met you, Eddie, and you said, Brian, you're wholesaling houses. If you just consider adding creative financing to your business, it could really change your business. Now, I was a little, we'll just say hard-headed and didn't quite get it, but I have seen the light now, right? And I've seen the light now. Scott, I mean, clearly we've got some smarter people on the call today. And so I'll kind of hand it over to Joe and you can kind of walk us through what we're going to be talking about.
All right. So I want to introduce you guys to Jay Redding from Fort Wayne, Indiana. How are you, Jay?
Doing fantastic, Joe. Great to see you, Eddie. Thanks, Brian.
You look very official today with your headsets and so on, man. I mean,
it's called old ears. That's what it's called.
Well, we've got the three older guys. Then we've got our good-looking talent up there in the top right, left corner, right. So, Jay, tell us a little bit about your deal here, and just a little bit about your background as well. You came to Noteschool, and again, Eddie said he remembered you being in class, and we did. We were in Indianapolis.
Indianapolis,
yep. And
right.
You sat right on the class was set up with like 4 different sections. We had a big class, and we were right there on the front row all 3 days, man.
Yeah.
Yep. And remember it like it was yesterday. So you were doing some rentals and you were doing some fix and flips along with your son-in-law, right?
That is correct. Actually, we have about 45 rentals. We do about 3 to 5 retail flips a year. We buy some tax liens, and we're wanting to incorporate some seller financing into this, playing more of the long-term game and gradually reducing the number of rentals over time. That's been our game plan.
Right. And you have been moving in that direction with the rentals as well, right?
Yes, we are. So in this particular deal, we purchased this property with our own capital, $37,000. All right, we scheduled about a $50,000 rehab for it.
Right.
And we're not inexperienced in doing rehabs and retail flips, that type of thing. But every once in a while, anyone that has retail or rehabbed a property will find that every once in a while you're going to run into a situation where the more you dig into it, the worse it gets. And that was kind of the situation on this home. So we ended up blowing our budget by 20 grand. Okay, which put us in. We fixed everything. It's going to be it's a great home for the new buyers. But now we're into it at about 107, 108,000, and the retail market's around 125, 129. And by the time you take in the realtor fees or whatever, if you're selling it on the open market, there just wasn't much juice in that strategy. There was only about 5 to 7 on a good day. So
selling it as a flip, the juice wasn't worth the squeeze, was it?
No, it really was not. Now, in my previous years, I would have just took it on the chin and, okay, live another day, and here we go.
Right.
And we were far enough into the training here with you guys, and it's like, well, there's no better time than this to try it.
Right.
So that's what we basically did. We marketed at 129.9. We put the signs in the yard. We started to do the marketing on Facebook marketplace,
Right.
And my tree trimmer, who I've worked with for years, actually contacted me. I actually asked him to do a bid for me on one of our other places, and he just asked me, "Do you have any houses?" Because he knows what we do.
Right.
And I said, "Well, yeah, we've got this one right now. We'd be willing to sell or finance it with you. So, but you got to go through underwriting. You're gonna have to go through all of this, that type of stuff." And we talked. Good guy, but he will never qualify for a bank mortgage because his business he works really hard for about 10 months, 10 to 10 and a half, 11 months out of the year, and January and February, you just don't do too much when there's snow on the ground and snow up on the trees and everything else.
So, Jay, let me stop you right there. So this gentleman is the gentleman that we talk about at Noteschool all the time, right?
Yep. That's exactly.
Buyer, that just missed buyer. He's self-employed. He's a contractor, and he's just, he was just one of these guys that just couldn't go out and couldn't qualify for bank financing.
Correct.
Especially, since the whole COVID thing back, started several months ago. So yeah, this is our buyer. This is what we talk about. This is what we talked about with Seth last week. It's just that just missed buyer. So you talk to this guy, and he says and you went through an RMLO with this guy, residential mortgage loan originator, and he was your guy, right?
He really was. I mean, he had a credit score of 714 even.
Wow.
Okay, with all that. So it's like, and he was willing to put 18 plus down as a down payment. And so it was about 14, his down payment was about 14% of the purchase price. And it's like, okay, this is all lining up really well. And we did the full underwriting with him. It helped. I already knew him, all right, for a number of years. So he's a good professional business person in what he does. All right, good hard worker, good character. And it's like this is perfect. So what we did, we actually went then and got a private lender. We do a lot of our business with private lenders, and brought a private lender on board to be able to pull our money out of the deal. At $80,000, all right, for 240 months for 20 years at 6%. And then we did a wrap note over the top of this to our buyer at a 30-year, 360 month at 9.5%. And that nets us out then at $366 a month on monthly cash flow.
For 240 months.
For 240 months, and then $939 a month for the last 120 months.
Right. So let's talk about that just a second,
Sure.
Jay. So you had an underlying lien with a private lender. These are those guys that we talk about every week, in Note School. Just a private lender who's got some capital. He could be a burnout landlord, right? We call him a bull, right? And you borrowed $80,000 at 6% for 240 months. And then you sold the property subject to that underlying. You did what's called a wraparound. Yep. And so you had a 240-month loan with your private lender, right? You were netting $366 a month, right? And then after that 240th payment, the underlying lien is paid off, and then you've got that full $939 a month in cash flow for another 120 months. Plus you had the down payment, right?
That's correct. Yeah, there's $18,000 down payment. Now, I applied the $18,000 directly to our debt service to be able to get out, so we would not have to borrow as much with the private lender. Is what we did. Right. But I mean, the cash flow is great on this. I fully anticipate this particular borrower because I just understand how he works. He'll probably pay it off early in chunks, and that's fine. Okay, that's no problem at all with that. But yeah, I've essentially turned what would have probably been in my younger years only about a $5,000 to $7,000 profit now something that's really given us long-term development of wealth over time with some of our other properties.
To go to term, you'd make over $200,000, right?
That is correct. Yeah, and the other great thing is now we still had $9,000 into the deal of our own money.
Right.
Okay. In the first year, our return is at 49%. All right. On the money we got into the deal, we have all of our money back in 2 years, and we got no money in the deal after that point. Yeah. And so it's a win-win. It's a win for the private lender, a win for the end buyer, and it's a win for us. So it's the great way to do business.
Well, and this is exactly the type of thing that we teach at Note School, right? On a weekly basis. This is the type of thing that we see our students, right? And Jay, here's one of the things that, Eddie and I and Brian talk about all the time. You're one of those guys that, you came to the class, right? You learned what we taught, and then you went out and you applied it, right?
That's exactly right. I remember Eddie talking in our first meeting, was that about showing up for practice. He was making the analogy, you got to show up for practice. Well, that resonated with me because I was a former Division I track and field coach, and I get that, I understand. So that's why I show up for practice every day.
Well, Jay, you didn't say it quite right.
Okay.
Jay, you got to show up for practice.
You got to show up for practice. Yeah, there you go.
So let's bring Eddie on right now that we've kind of poked him a little bit. So let's bring Eddie on and let's talk to Eddie a minute about this deal.
Oh yeah. So Joe and those guys, Jay, they never miss an opportunity. Apparently they think I have a Southern accent.
You have some type of an accent.
I have one too. So I'm just saying.
That's fine.
Jay, I would say that there were a couple of puzzle pieces here that I just wanted to point out that you utilized. Okay. I say this all the time, and a lot of people around the real estate investing business, I don't think really get this, but you now really get this.
Yes, very much so.
You borrowed $80,000 from what would have been a prior landlord. They have money. They just don't want to be a landlord. They don't want that second job. They want to be just the bank. And so you positioned this deal very well and showed a private lender how they could loan you $80,000 and get a 6% true interest on their investment every year, or interest on their loan. And by the way, if I'm listening correctly, you immediately gave them $18,000 from the down payment money. And so now they only had $60,000 out, not $80,000 out.
Well, that's not true because I used the $18,000 to only borrow because we were into this at 107.
Okay, I got it. So they loaned you $80,000, and so that puzzle piece was you used long-term, low-rate money. People talk about private capital all the time, and I sort of think that they are not talking about the same private capital that we talk about. Right. Some people think going to the real estate investor meeting and getting 10% money is getting private capital. That's pawn shop money. What you borrowed was not pawn shop money,
No.
right? That was one significant puzzle piece. This all can be done, but people have to develop a mindset of understanding there is that guy that needs to get his money out, right? So you did a great job of finding that private capital. Once you structure the financing with the low cost money in place, then reselling it really was an automatic. Now you happened to sell it to a guy that you knew, and definitely I agree with Joe. He was that penalty box buyer. I have a high volume real estate investor that I was talking to yesterday, a guy that you hear on the Deal Labs, Jay. And he said that he just finished a refi. He's got perfect credit. He had perfect income. And he said he just finished a refi on a rent house. And he said it took him over 3 months. And he said, I went through the most hoops I've ever gone through in my career. And I said, and understand that this is the direction the market is going. Real estate is on fire right now, but mortgage lending has tightened their criteria drastically. Right. But Jay, think about this. That guy is a perfect buyer. The mortgage industry is not going to make him alone and left him behind. You got to provide, you provided home ownership to a guy, and now he owns a home because you had the vision of offering creative financing to him.
Very much so.
Jay, here's the cool thing about it. You know, we talk about this all the time. You became the bank.
I did.
You're the bank. You put a cash flow. You borrowed at one, right, when you deposit your money in the bank, and then they reloan it out. And they're happy with that spread, right? They call it arbitrage, right?
Arbitrage, yes. I'm happy with that arbitrage.
Yes, you are.
Well, and the other thing is, you know, from the private lender's aspect, all right, he's really well secured in this. I mean, his loan to value is only 62%.
Yeah.
Okay. And the in loan, the in buyer loan is at 84%. And it's like, yeah, those are good all the way around. So,
you know, people, Jay, a lot of times will think that that kind of a down payment is kind of a fluke. You can't do that.
Well, we've done it multiple times now.
You know, statistically, last month, there's a software that tracks all the conventional mortgages that are made called Ellie Mae. They did a statistic, and the average down payment for a Fannie Mae Freddie Mac loan last month was 19% cash down. So it just starts showing us that when we believe it, then all of a sudden we can live it. Right? The market is what the market is, but sometimes we don't believe the market. You know, and I was listening to of course, we got the fun joy of living your case study, you know, as you were developing it. And then of course you presented that to an internal audience here not too long ago with Noteschool. And we were excited to bring you on Noteschool TV today, because let me tell you something. You and I know that you may not do the most volume real estate investing or in your region of the country.
True.
But I don't believe there's a lot of real estate investors knocking down $200,000 profit on a deal in your region very often, right?
Yeah, not at our price points. That's correct.
So it isn't.
We're not in the $250,000, $300,000 price points that we are in other parts of the country.
You made $200,000 on a $120,000 house.
Yeah.
Here's what I think is important. I hear the people always like to say he's a house buyer and he does so many deals a year. That's kind of like your intro, right? This guy's a house buyer and he does so many deals a year, and you can just smile and look back and say, I'm a house buyer and I don't focus on volume. I focus on profit.
Exactly.
Amen.
I like to set it up and be done for the next 20 years.
What you heard my father-in-law, you know, he was an old Southern gentleman from Hattiesburg, Mississippi. And when I first started with him, this is 40 years ago, when he first started teaching me the business, he'd lean over there and he had a pair of reading glasses on him, had them on the end of his nose. It looked like there's 1,000,000 miles between the top of his head to those reading glasses. He'd look down those reading glasses and he'd talk in a real Southern accent and he'd say, "You'll get a check forever."
Yeah, and you know, the great thing is on this, you know, it fits right into what we're already doing. You know, we're doing 3 to 5 retail flips a year. We create 3 to 5 of these. I mean, it's not long, Joe. That's a very sizable chunk that's passing through on a monthly basis. So yeah, it's pretty much our new model for our retail flips now. Let's put it that way.
That's great.
Yeah,
Jay, we are thrilled to have you. Thank you for coming on and sharing your story. You know, I tell our students all the time, and I really do mean this. The power of your story helps somebody else get the vision that they can do this too.
right.
Yeah. So my pleasure. Thank you.
Good to see you, Jay.
Good to see you, Jay.
guys.
Happy Thanksgiving to you and the family. Let your son-in-law know we ask about him.
All right. Sounds good. Certainly will.
Thanks.
See you, buddy. Well, let's bring Brian on. And what do you think of that, Brian?
You know, there was a couple things that stood out to me that I think are kind of interesting. The first one is there's a lot of people out there in their market right now who feel like, man, I'm in this competitive market. There's not a lot of deals. The deals that I see, there's just not much meat on the bone. And that was essentially the exact same situation he was left in where, man, I got this flip. There's not much meat on the bone. Am I stuck? Do I become what I call an accidental landlord where I just like, I guess I'm going to own it forever as a rental property. But by having this additional play, he now had access to more inventory. There's more, you know, marginal deals out there he could always go get if he wanted to, I guess. But it shows that inventory really may not be the problem. Just because you're in this super competitive marketplace, there's these deals that seem marginal that by adding creative financing to it and buying something on terms or being able to resell it on terms, you create your own margin, you create your own profit. Yeah. And so it's a really eye-opening thing for me. And I think for a lot of other investors as well to be like, well, actually, maybe I do see deals like this, right? And the other piece that I thought was really fascinating was, you know, the raising capital piece. I talk to so many investors, especially when they're new. They say, well, man, where do you find private money? Who's going to loan me private money? And the reality is money goes to good deals, of course. But what was really fascinating is he thought in terms of, well, what would make the private lender, the burnout landlord, give me his money? Well, I'm going to give him something that he gets a return on investment, right? In this case, it was, you know, under 8%, which is great. But more importantly, he said, how do I get it down? How do I get that number down to the 6%? Well, I'm going to lower his risk. The lower his risk goes, the lower my chance of getting a lower interest rate, right? And so by moving the loan to value from 80% loan to value to 70% to 62%, I think he said, it really started to incentivize the lender to say, okay, I know I'm going to get my money back. I feel pretty good about this. I'm okay with taking that 6% because you're not asking me to put it into a hard money deal to where, yeah, I can get 10%, but who knows if this house is ever going to get flipped or ever get sold, right?
Yeah, you know, you got to go out and find somebody to reinvest, to borrow money again from you in 3 months or 6 months or 9 months, whatever it is.
Yeah,
right? Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, and once again, he gave a burnout landlord a chance to get their money deployed and earn an interest rate and know they're not going to get an invoice for the air conditioner or whatever. They don't have a tolerance for that kind of investment anymore, and just making a loan was great. I want to remind you guys, this case study, there was no seller financing when he bought it involved. A lot of our case studies will be involved where the seller carried all of the financing when you buy it. And in this case, the seller walked away with cash, and it was a big rehab project. Yep. So there was a lot of things about this deal that are different than some other case studies where the seller carried a lot of the financing when he bought it. In this case, the seller got all cash and didn't carry any of the financing. Yeah. Other thing about this is Jay had been investing in properties for years. And I think a lot of times, you know, Brian, you look at yourself, you were a full-time wholesaler for years. And really, we're just sort of resisting. This creative financing is not really what I need to do. And it's just funny. So I would, as an encouragement, I would say, if you've been doing this for years and you're not where you want to be, then consider what Brian has figured out and consider what Jay has now figured out. And if you're young and you haven't been through all the pain and aggravation that Brian has or Jay has, then why don't you figure out earlier than they did how to add this to your business?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And some of us don't, even when Eddie Speed himself says, you should really be doing this, right? But it is kind of interesting because my fear, and maybe your fear, is that you have to give up your money today. We're like, well, Jay's going to make all this money in the long term, but I got bills to pay. I got, and that was one of my fears. And if you go back and watch last week's episode of Noteschool TV, you'll see that you can make some money today, and it's not a problem, right? And so if you're interested in kind of what was created today by Jay, if you're trying to learn a little bit more about notes, or maybe you just want to understand the note piece of it, right? And just understand, I don't really talk to sellers, I just want to understand the note piece. Well, I would encourage you, while you're on the YouTube channel, go to the playlist called Feeding Frenzy Friday, where we break down a note asset from Notes Direct each week, talking about the pros and the cons and some of the due diligence with that note to find out, hey, is this a great note or is this a bad note? And what's kind of my exit strategy? As always, we'll be here every single Wednesday at 11 a.m. Live Central Time to kind of talk a little bit more and try to bring some value to you and to your investment business. I'd encourage you to, again, please like the video. We'd really love for you to subscribe to the channel. It means a lot to us. We love to get the engagement. So make sure you're clicking that bell notification to get involved. And again, if you're like, this is cool, how do I learn more than just watching one video? Well, again, subscribe to the channel, but also you could go to Noteschool TV, noteschool.com/TV, and learn a little bit more about some of the content that we have and some other videos that we'll try to point you in the right direction. So we really appreciate you coming on this week. We will plan on seeing you next week. And again, we'll see you on Noteschool TV. See you next week.